I,
So, and we'll try to get started more or less on time. Why don't you go get yourself all nicotined up, and I'm going to go do the same.
all right,
And I'll be right here.
all right,
All right, I'm
and
just going to mute for a minute.
yeah,
And yeah, looks like we're on schedule. We ought to be able to get rolling in 10 minutes or so.
yeah, we should be able to. I'm just setting everything up. I'll go out and do a quick
Okay.
smoke before I come in and
Okay.
put a little bit of music on here until we get back.
Excellent. Good thinking. We're on schedule. We ought to be. Bob's coming home.
Oh, that's gonna be cool.
Well, her flight, the last I heard, was on the 19th. And I don't know if you've been checking out her videos, but she just did her video of leaving.
Oh, I haven't
Which,
been a
yeah, it's very difficult for her to do. I can understand. But yeah, last I knew, her flight back was the 19th.
cool.
So,
I mean, I know she's wanting to, or you know what I mean. She's there with her dad and stuff, but it's still a good thing. I guess it's
well, she's got to get home eventually.
yeah,
She does have her own home, and but she's had this time to spend with her dad, which is important. And she did get to see her mom before she left us, so that was, I think, a blessing. Even if it wasn't a very good thing to happen,
yeah,
at least he was there. She would have been devastated if it happened when she wasn't there, I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
So let me go ahead and I will get this song going, or these songs, I guess, and go get your smoke in, and I'll do mine. And
All right, I'll see you shortly.
all right.
Door clicks.
Okay, give me a second.
All right, we got my pal Yusuf showed up.
Okay, cool.
So he's on the YouTube thing. I see a thing there for him.
If he wants to, you can have him come in.
Well, not tonight's show, but I think in a future show, I wanted him to check out the scene here.
Mm-hmm.
And I've already got tonight's show pretty much mapped out. But I did talk to him a little bit. I said,
Hello,
check out the
Roger.
Wonderful World of
What
Business.
are you?
I could see him being an asset to more than one of your shows, Roger.
If he wants to come on, man, he's more than welcome. It's like I said before. This is a open or it's a community based
Yeah.
channel. So
And I know you always like to talk to intelligent and interesting people.
yes,
And you seem to be trying to get a collection of them together, and then you try to fit them together in some of the best conversations. Now, see, I'm getting background from your mic again.
okay. Hold on a minute. Let
Like
me see.
There's a TV or
Is that help?
I hear someone just said, "I know you always like to talk."
Hold
Maybe
on.
they're thinking about me.
Hold on a minute. Let me.
Oh, take your time.
I got distracted here real quick. I gotta get back on.
Easy to do. Getting my my pipe all loaded up.
Okay.
Smoking some nice shag tobacco.
Here we go. I need to. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, Bob.
Okay. That's probably what it was. Are you still hearing the background?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
Not so much. Did you turn your mic on and on?
Okay. How does that sound?
I can hear you.
Okay. Let me see what's. Well, got to make sure that everything is going right.
Aye.
Okay. How does that sound?
I can hear you.
Okay. I'm wondering if maybe it's if my mic is on the computer. Okay. Is that better?
I don't know. I hear the recording going in the background, so I don't know if that's it or.
I'm gonna go see if maybe the TV is actually being able to be heard.
Okay.
From because that's all the way in the front room and stuff. So.
Weird. Maybe do you have like a noise suppression or noise reduction setting you could try?
I've got every echo cancellation, noise suppression, everything running. It by all accounts, it shouldn't even be making those sounds. I've even got I've got a noise gate. I've got noise suppression, all of it.
Weird.
How about now? Is that helping?
Well, like I said, I can't tell if it's. That doesn't sound too bad right now. I mean, if you're listening to the recordings, as long as you can't hear them, they won't show up on the recording.
Yeah, it's. I think that's what it is. I think it's the noise gate. Because there we go. I believe that's it right there. Does it sound better?
Yeah, it sounds better.
Okay, let me test it on the see if the stream's picking me up, because it's there we go. I believe that's it right there. Does it sound better?
Uh,
Yeah, it sounds good. Okay.
as long as it sounds good on your end, that's the main thing, because
What-
your end is the recording end.
Well,
And this
what
will be an important document later when you record it and edit it and re-release it.
the important thing is what I do is I go in and I listen to the actual stream. Like I unmuted it on YouTube to find out if I can get the feedback from the sound on the actual stream to see what it sounds like. So
Okay.
okay, so I have YouTube up, Kick is up, Rumble is up and running, and so is Twitch.
Cool.
So we have everything up and running and ready to go. We do have Yusuf in the chat, and he says, "What's the topic?" So let me get the countdown started, and you can do your cool introduction.
I'm getting an echo.
An echo.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's like every
see,
time we say anything, it's repeated like 5 seconds later. I think you're just running stuff over to listen to it.
Yeah, I can't hear any of that. I mean,
I can hear everything you just said repeated.
that is weird. Now is
Yeah.
I'm wondering if it would have to be Jitsi.
You want to go over to Teams? See if that works, where we can go in and out of Jitsi and try that.
Yeah, let me call you on Teams real quick.
All right. We do apologize, ladies and gentlemen, for these technical difficulties. Our regularly scheduled show, will start as soon as we can get it to.
We've been having this issue for a couple. This makes the second week now, so.
Hello.
Hello. Let me close out Jitsi. All right, can you hear me good?
Yes, loud and clear as usual. The Teams audio quality is right where it's supposed to be.
Sounds good on my end too. So, let me do a final test with Jitsi. Do a final test. Right, can you hear me good?
Okay. Yes, loud and clear as usual. The
sounds good on YouTube. So we are set and ready to go. So just tell me when and I'll do the countdown and we'll get started.
All right, you do the countdown. I'll do the cool introduction. All my introductions are cool, of course, but
that's right.
I'll make a cool one.
That's right. Okay, so here we go. 3, 2, 1, now.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is your captain speaking. Welcome aboard Clandestine International Airlines Flight 17, en route to Shambhala International Airport at an undisclosed location in the Himalayan mountains, or possibly Himalayan mountains. We're not quite sure. If anyone would like to ask or mention in the comments the proper way to pronounce that, I am happy to be corrected. We are just attaining our cruising altitude of 23,000 feet. Our forecast shows that it should be fairly clear sailing ahead, but our ship might encounter some turbulence, but we're not worried about that because I've got my co-pilot and electronics warfare officer, Roger Hansen, here at my side. Roger, good to have you back.
Glad to be here.
Excellent. And I am going to turn off the seatbelt light and light the smoking lamp. So smoke them if you got them. Sit back, relax, and I am going to set the plane on automatic pilot. And there we go. And we're off again. Roger, so what's been going on with you, my friend?
Not really much on my end. It's been a relatively good week, to be honest with you. Other than I've had some projects with Mark Watashik. We've been doing some pretty cool stuff with music. Came up with a few songs that are kind of like Dr. Demento style. You know what I mean? So
nice.
might be getting into that kind of genre I think that would be pretty cool to get into.
Yeah, I was always sorry Dr. Demento didn't discover us when I was in that comedy heavy metal band Hungry Jack for so many years. And the great thing about comedy music, I think, is that people expect original songs. It's I
Mhm.
mean, the band I'm playing in now, we do all covers, which is fine. It's fun and everything, but there is a certain joy and fun in having to come up with original tunage. And comedy music actually gives you, that whole Dr. Demento thing, that gives you a lot more freedom, I think, as a creator. You get to explore more ideas
Oh yeah.
that you normally wouldn't get to uh, do otherwise. That's very groovy. And of course, it all has to do with your intention. You were waiting for me to get to Buddhism, weren't you?
Oh yeah.
Because in Buddhism, of course, it's all about intention. Intention is very important. Intention is karma, if you like, and karma is intention. What a lot of people don't understand about karma is that it is basically a psychological state. It's also intention, which is action, because your intentions shape your action. You can't do something until you think about it one way or another. And you might say you think or you act thoughtlessly, but there are thoughts that have gone into your action beforehand. And this gets to something that's been brought up with me more than once, and that is about the place of hamburgers in Buddhism. And I know a lot of people who are vegetarians. I was vegetarian myself for a while, and I may become a vegetarian again. I just say there's nothing wrong with vegetarianism. I think there are very good arguments, ethical arguments for being a vegetarian. Um, not so much, in my opinion, anyway. I don't think it's particularly healthy, but if you approach it right, I don't think it's particularly unhealthy. But be that as it may, I've often heard people say that if you're a Buddhist, you shouldn't eat meat. Now, the Buddha loved pork chops. The Dalai Lama loves chicken. That's his favorite food. Um, and before you go on about like these monks craving food, as I have been given to understand, with the caveat, of course, that my ignorance of Buddhism is vast, and these statements only reflect my current knowledge and ignorance of Buddhism at this time. Monks are allowed to enjoy some things. There are, the Buddha doesn't say you shouldn't have any pleasures. There are harmless pleasures. And for a monk, one of these is eating, one of them is bathing, and I believe the other one is sleeping, but not too much sleeping, obviously. And for that matter, not too much bathing or too much eating. And there are rules about that too, which restrict monks to only eating before noontime. Monks are not, except under certain circumstances. So, but that doesn't mean you can't enjoy these things. So, the premise that people give ethically for vegetarianism is that it reduces animal suffering. And, you get told, don't buy that hamburger because you're going to make an animal suffer. The whole point about buying the hamburger is not to make an animal suffer for most people. They're buying the hamburger to have a hamburger because they're hungry. Now, the animal that hamburger is made from has already suffered and is dead. From a Buddhist standpoint, there is nothing magical or mystical about remains of a human or an animal or anything. That's why Buddhists tend to be big into cremation. It's just you get rid of this, it's just a physical envelope, it's not important anymore. So by eating the hamburger or not eating the hamburger, it does not change in the least the fact of that animal's previous suffering and death. As a matter of fact, you could argue that you don't want food to go to waste. The food might keep someone alive and keep them from dying. So in that sense, giving someone a hamburger would be a meritorious act of generosity. The thing about karma is, or karma, I'd like to say karma, but most people understand karma better. The thing about karma is it's very immediate. It has to do with your actual intentions and your actual actions. And this is where we get to intention. If you are buying a hamburger, you're buying it with the intention of feeding yourself. You're not buying, if you buy a hamburger and say, I'm buying this hamburger because I'm hungry, that's your intention, right? if you have an intention, for example, now from the vegetarian side, if you feel that by eating meat you are contributing overall to animals suffering and dying, this is an abstract idea. It has nothing to do with your immediate experience or the immediate results of your actions. However, if you refrain from buying the hamburger and, I don't know, have an apple or something instead, with the intention of reducing suffering, then that, I would argue, is good karma. You do get karma points for that, right? But if you buy the hamburger, and again, the animal's already dead, you have it was not killed specifically for you, right? It's just a hamburger, and you just want to eat the hamburger. Now, if you bought the hamburger with the intention of creating suffering, that would be a different story. If you say, I'm going to buy this hamburger because I intend to increase the suffering of other living beings, that would definitely be bad karma in my book. And again, I am open to correction. I'm sure I have listeners who are much better versed in Buddhism than mine. I'm sure there may be details here that I'm missing. But as far as I understand it, it has to do with your intentions. And that's why I say there's nothing wrong with being a vegetarian. I have been one myself. And as I said, I think there are perfectly good ethical arguments about it. But if you're not a vegetarian, there are no bad karma points necessarily involved. It's different if you instruct that the animal be killed, or if it's killed specifically for you and you know it. Like if someone says, Raj, we knew you were coming over, so we killed this chicken for you. If you were a good Buddhist, you would say, I'm sorry, I can't eat that. But if you came over and they said, Roger, we were just about to have chicken dinner, why don't you join us? There would be no bad karma there because you had no intention of causing any harm. And it all comes down to intention. And this is actually a very sophisticated way of looking at this sort of a thing, because most religions, and we don't have to bring up Julian Jaynes's theory of bicameralism, but of course I have to, stretching back to the bicameral times and immediately after, religious ethics had to do with what the God wanted and what the God didn't want, right? It all had to do with whether you were obeying orders or not. And even if you did something mistakenly, it didn't matter. The taboo was broken. It was almost like magical thinking, right? But in Buddhism, for example, if you walk across a darkened room and you accidentally tread upon an insect and kill it, there's no bad karma because you had no intention to cause harm. This is actually a pretty sophisticated concept. This is what leads to today in the legal system charges of things like manslaughter or involuntary manslaughter. The idea that you can have a different intention and that this intention should be counted. In the old days, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, even if it was an accidental injury or death that you caused, you were still responsible because you actually did it. It's a very raw, very basic kind of, the action was all that mattered, not the intention. But the Buddha teaches us that intentions are actions, they're mental actions. And in order to have good actions, you have to have good intentions, because all of our actions are the result of our intentions. How do you have good intentions? You have to have good view, a right view, the right mental equipment, the right outlook on things. The Buddhist groundings in virtue. These are the things that will give you the intentions you want. And the intentions that you get from Buddhism, you want right view. Right view is basically understanding the Four Noble Truths, the truths of suffering. And you want to make decisions that will cause you to have less suffering in your life. And this means the people around you will have less suffering in your life. So with that direction in mind, then your intentions will get more skillful, they'll get better. And if you have good intentions, you will tend to have good results. Now, it's not going to be uniformly good results because there's a lot of karma involved. And I think last week, was it, Roger? We were talking a little bit about dependent origination or dependent co-arising.
Oh, yeah.
When this arises, that arises. When this ceases to arise, that ceases to arise. Everything is interconnected and we cannot control everything. In fact, most of our misery very often comes from the fact that we're trying to control everything outside of ourselves. But in Buddhism, we learn that you really can only control your own mind. And that's a hell of a lot more difficult than controlling things outside of you, let me tell you. But by controlling your mind, this gives you a place of power that you normally would not have, because if you don't control your own mind, something or someone else is going to control your own mind. For a lot of people, it's the television set, although nowadays we don't have TV sets as much as we have computers. For a lot of people, it's fashions, and for a lot of people, it's their defilements, their desires. And at the end of the day, our desire is to be happy, but we're looking for happiness in all the wrong places, in all the wrong ways. We're looking for happiness in temporary things. We're looking for happiness in the world, in the body. And as we were saying before, I mean, yes, the body is capable of all sorts of very interesting sensations and experiences, but at the end of the day, if you identify with the body and hook into the body is bringing you to illness, aging, and death, not necessarily in that order. This means that any happiness coming from the body is going to be temporary. It's going to be unsatisfactory. And even in the short term, you know, we've talked before about pleasures, and so you have a pleasure and then it's gone. Well, what have you got? You know, probably a scarred liver, a lot less money. Perhaps you've lost some self-respect. You've got regret because you don't have the pleasure. You might have regret for the things you had to do to get the pleasure. And it's temporary. So a happiness that isn't lasting is not a happiness that's worth pursuing. The happinesses that are worth pursuing very often entail us giving up short-term pleasure so that we can have a better reward in the long term for what we want to do. And this is not rocket science. You know, we all know that if we put our money aside a little bit, we can buy one big thing instead of spending a little bit every day, you know, just thinking ahead. We know that if we chop extra firewood every day, we'll have plenty of warm wood in the winter. This seems very obvious. And early translators of the Buddhist text were like, you know, what's this? Couldn't possibly be what he means. It's so simple. It's like, oh, it is simple, but just try it and see. So much of Buddhism is really just common sense, but it's very difficult to apply these things, especially in every moment of our day-to-day life. But getting back to the hamburger, which I somehow have gotten very far away of.
You've actually got some comments too that I should read off to you from.
Oh, okay. Go to the comment section. Thanks everyone that comments, and please like and subscribe as well, no matter what platform you're watching us on.
Now, first one was a comment. It was Buddhists have a vegetarian festival.
Yes.
And then after that, it went on to say, what about ahimsa? Ahimsa.
Yeah, non-harm. Non-harm. A good point. Well, were you going to read more, or should I talk about those?
Those are the ones that you got so far.
Okay. Yes, Buddhists do, and there are many vegetarian Buddhists. In fact, there are whole schools of Buddhism that do preach vegetarianism. I'm speaking from the standpoint of the Theravada Buddhism, which is the original, or the closest that we have to the original Buddhism. Many Mahayana sects do go for the vegetarian option. And the thing about the vegetarianism is it seemed to have evolved when the monks moved from India up into the rest of Southeast Asia, and they also moved to the west towards Iran and Persia, areas like that. So when the monks got to China, for example, they tried to maintain the Vinaya rules. Now, the Vinaya are the rules for monks, and the rules are very strict. They're very difficult to follow unless you're in a society that allows them to be followed. And one of the very important rules is that monks shall not engage in any kind of agricultural labor. They will not break the soil. They will not plant. They will not, obviously, not raise animals for livestock. They won't engage in farming at all. Instead, they are to subsist solely on freely given offerings from lay people. So you'll see these Buddhist monks every day going for what they call their alms rounds. And you can find pictures of this on the internet. Excuse me, if you live in a Buddhist country or near Buddhists, you might very well have witnessed it yourself, where monks will go out and they carry their bowl, begging bowl, as they call it sometimes, and the people will give them food, whatever leftovers they had. And as a monk, except that there are a few prohibitions, but otherwise you eat whatever is given to you.
whether it's meat or fish or this or that. There are some meats they're forbidden to eat. Monks are not allowed to eat snake, which is actually a delicacy in many Asian countries. Before you go, ugh. I believe they're not supposed to eat dogs, and there's like certain reasons for that that I am not aware of, but which I could find out. But otherwise, the whole thing was that you weren't picky. You ate whatever was given you. And as far as the ahimsa, again, the harm has already been done to the animals. And as long as the animal was not killed specifically for the monk, or the monk did not order come in and say, I really wouldn't mind some pork chops next time. The Buddha was saying you had really good pork chops. Why don't you kill that? No, that's right out. Not allowed that sort of thing. So it's really started as part of the standard ascetic practice. Buddhism was devised by an ascetic for other ascetics. These were people who were part of a lifestyle that was prevalent in Iron Age India, where men and women at a certain stage in their life would very often, not always, and more men than women, but women took this path too. They would basically become wandering mendicants. And one thing they would do is divest themselves of all their property except for the simplest things. A robe, a small satchel, a bowl to eat out of. And they were not, like in the Vinaya for monks, they are not allowed to touch money, not even a credit card. Now, a lot of monks don't follow these rules very well anymore, and it is increasingly difficult to do so in the modern world. And again, I'm talking about the Theravada Vinaya. I'm not talking about the Mahayana sects. So, but as we originally understand Buddhism, monks weren't even allowed to touch money, so they would just be given. And the idea was you were happy and grateful for anything that was given you. You couldn't be picky and say, "Well, I'm vegetarian." Wait, is that vegan? No, you just whatever it was, and you ate it because it's what the people. And this is in a country, in countries, we don't understand so well today, Raj. We don't really have starvation in America anymore. We have like food insecurity. I see that some of the poorest people in the town I live in, they're not starving to death. But for most humans, for most of human history, starvation was a really big thing. It happened a lot. All you needed was one bad harvest, and you could like lose half your population, dying really horribly. So the idea that these poorest people, usually where the monks are moving among, would share what little they have. You didn't turn your nose up at anything. I remember one monk's memoir where he talked about how this very, very poor family always gave him a nice offering, and he would feel like, you know what, I've really got to work hard at being a monk because these guys gave me, it's like the widow's mite, in Christian story. Just that small amount, which is such a huge proportion of that person's wealth, is so much more important. So but when the monks got to China, it was a different kettle of fish. Literally, it was a different begging bowl of fish, if you like. There was no tradition of feeding monks or feeding mendicants, which you had in Iron Age India and its environs. So if you were decided to become a monk and you were in China and you went out with your begging bowl, nobody would feed you. They would tell you to get a job. They would tell you to grow some food. We're busy working. We're not giving you. So the monks, in order to survive, were forced to start cultivating food. And the only food they could grow was fruits and vegetables. Obviously, they cannot engage in animal husbandry. So there you have the more strict vegetarian dietary tradition grew out of the necessity of the monks had for producing their own food. Now, this does lead to some interesting aspects of these forms of Buddhism. One of my favorite books is the story of the Journey to the West, Monkey, sometimes called, about a monkey king. And in the story, you have a young Buddhist monk who is journeying to basically get scriptures, and encounters all these different monsters and so forth. And a lot of them want to eat the monk, because they have this idea that if you eat someone that holy, you'll get holiness, you'll get amazing powers. And this is an old tradition in the East where always spiritual advancement and enlightenment comes with what they call siddhi, or miraculous powers. And in Buddhism, these are generally like, you don't pay too much attention to them. Yeah, you might get some psychic powers, but don't get all worked up about it. It's nothing important. But non-Buddhists were thinking, wow, I'll eat this Buddhist monk and I'll be able to levitate or glow or something like that. So they always wanted to eat the monk and his companions. And the way it was presented was that it's no different for one of these supernatural beings to eat a human than it is for a human to eat a rabbit or a pig. And yeah, that makes a lot of sense actually. If you're going to go eat other living creatures, then don't be surprised that another living creature is going to eat you. And the attitude was never one of agastment. It's like, well, of course they might want to eat a human. The humans are just another animal too. If that's the way you're going to look at it, if you're not going to be a vegetarian. So, and as I've said, I think there are very good ethical arguments for vegetarianism if you want to be a vegetarian. It gets back to intentionality. So ahimsa again, if you are deliberately buying a non-hamburger option, if you're getting an apple, or a carrot or something instead of a hamburger, or maybe you're just having some rice and vegetables or something, and you're doing it with the intention of reducing harm, then you're getting good karma points. However, there are no bad karma points as long as you're not buying the hamburger with the intention of causing harm, because the harm has been caused. You have not, the karma of killing that animal is only on the person that killed the animal and on no one else. And the flesh is not like magically. Now, you can't say that anything you do is going to do anything else. As far as I understand, strict Theravada Abhidhamma talks about presentism. The only reality is this moment. There is no past. It does not exist. You can't point to it. All you can do is remember it, and you're remembering it now. There is no future. You cannot point to it. All you can do is think about it and project and have hopes in your mind now, so that nothing you do can be said that it actually will or will not do something. So if you try to tell someone, if you don't stop eating that hamburger, then animals are going to be hurt. No, that is for Buddhism. That is, you're too many steps removed from the action. Buddhism has to do with your specific actions at this specific moment. When you buy the hamburger, you are not killing an animal. No one is dying. And you know what? If you don't buy that hamburger, it might get thrown away. It's not going to suddenly reassemble into the animal. You can't make up for things like that. So, on the other hand, you can have good intentions, and it's the intentions that make your karma. But failing to have good intentions is not the same as having bad intentions. It's really like a hydromechanical field in a lot of ways. It's like I was getting before, people tend to personalize the idea of karma or kama. And karma isn't there to punish people. It's not like rubbing its hands with glee, waiting for someone. And I've talked about this before. If a hammer slips out of your hand, or you drop a hammer and your foot is under the hammer and it gets hit by the hammer, it's going to hurt. It is not a punishment. All right, the hammer isn't getting even with you. It's not like, ah ha ha, you deserve that because no, it's simply cause and effect. And getting a little further about ahimsa, I'm going to tell a story that I've told before, but some of our listeners might not have heard it. This has to do with the karma of and intention and how this works. I said earlier before, like if you cross a darkened room and you tread on an insect and kill it, there's no bad karma there because there was no intention. You might not even be aware you did it. There's another side to that. Say that you have decided to kill someone. This is very bad karma. So you're going to take a life, not just the life of a sentient being, but a human life. So you're at a gun range and you're going to wait until somebody goes down to change the targets and you're going to shoot them, right? So you take your gun and you wait till you see your victim and he's changing a target, and you fire the gun and you see him fall. You immediately don't want to get arrested, so you throw down the gun, flee the country, travel across the world and hide out. Now, if that person that you shot at isn't actually hit, he might have slipped on a banana peel and fell just when you fired. He might be just fine. He might live to be 100, right? But the person who shot him believes that he shot him. He had the intention of killing. He performed the act, and as far as he knew, the act was completed. He has the bad karma of having committed a murder. Doesn't matter that the guy that he murdered is still alive, the psychological state, and that karma is his, one way or another. So karma is not like what most people assume it is. And I think we tend to try to Westernify it a little bit. So, but yeah, so ahimsa is a very direct thing. A very direct thing. But yes, you should try to be as harmless as possible. I try to be harmless all the time. You know, when I'm at work, I work outdoors in the summer. I think I mentioned, Raj, I've gotten looks from my fellow employees because when I see a caterpillar crossing a path and I see people walking towards it, I grab it and put it on a tree or something to keep it from being trodden upon. And I protect spiders and things when people want to destroy the webs, stuff like that. I need all the good karma I can get.
All right. Let me see. I believe I.
You still there?
Yeah, I had a interesting conversation in YouTube, and I was trying to figure out where the mute button was. I had it on mute so that I didn't make any strange noises.
Strange noises. That'd be a good name for a podcast.
But yeah, this is interesting. Yosef was talking about the Phuket Festival and the Nine Emperor Gods. Have you heard of that?
That sounds Chinese.
It's
what did he call it?
It's Phuket. Phuket. It's in Thailand.
Oh, okay.
It's a vegetarian festival for the Nine Emperor Gods.
Nice.
And they do their festival in October. This year it's going to be between the 10th and the 18th of October in 2026.
I've been seriously thinking of being a vegetarian again. I only stopped being a vegetarian because I was ill, and I just wasn't healing. And I just started eating meat, and it helped me heal right up. So, but I've been eating less and less meat lately.
I got caught just because I seen the Nine Emperor Gods. Now I need to know about these Nine Emperor Gods. That's gonna.
Well, you need to get him on one of your shows. Maybe you should do a Nine Emperor God show.
I have a good idea. Maybe you should do a Nine Emperor show and have him like be your guest and stuff, and you can.
We could have him on, sure.
Because that would be cool.
You know, maybe we can get him on next week's show. I advise him to check out The Wonderful World of Weirdness. I thought that he might find some very interesting conversations there. This is the place for interesting conversations, I gotta say.
Mm-hmm. If he wants to come on and talk about cool stuff like aliens and UFOs and folklore and myths and stuff like that, he can talk to me.
He can talk quite a bit. He's very erudite and intelligent. I think he'd be a plus for any of your shows.
So, I mean, if he wants to have an intelligent conversation, he would have to come talk to you, though.
Or Mark Edworthy.
Well, Mark Edworthy too, yeah. But yeah. I'm more into the weird stuff, like The Wonderful World of Weirdness. You know what I mean? The good and the bad weirdness too, not one or the other. I'm into all of it. You know.
That's the really weird stuff.
Yeah. It really is.
But yeah, though. So anyway, my point was that it's all about your intention.
Yeah.
What you do, and the better your intentions, the better your actions, and the better your actions, the better your results. And it doesn't sound like rocket science, and it's not. So let us try to be as harmless as we can, and let us have the best of intentions. Now, yes, I know what the road to is paved with. Those are good intentions, but those are good intentions that are not followed through.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it has to be intelligent intentions.
Well, from last week, whenever we were having our conversation, it made me do a little bit more digging into what we were talking about with karma.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that popped up that really stuck out to me was a term that was used. It was called volitional formations. Sakara, I guess is what they call it in Sanskrit.
Yeah. Fabrications are called sometimes.
Mm-hmm. It was like the way it explained it. It was because of our ignorance that we act out You know what I mean? And our actions are usually driven by craving and aversions.
Yes.
They leave imprints or formations. You know,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
that was what really stuck with me. Like and like a lot of it is intentional actions. You know,
Right.
concerning your body, your speech, the mind. Um, and this all is supposed to like plant seeds for things to happen in the future, you know.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's really what stuck out to me. And like consequences is another thing that I know a lot of people don't like to talk about when it comes to karma. You know, like
Hey, they don't like karma. They don't like karma. They wanna figure out a way to get around it.
mhm,
But yes, you are the owner of your actions. You are the heir of your actions. You are defined by your actions. You're related through your actions. Everything you do, for good or for evil, will come back and bite you on the ass one way or another eventually. And we can see this in our everyday life. And when you're talking about those intentions, Raj, it has to do with making sure that they actually are good, skillful, intelligent intentions. Because as we've talked about before, we have a lot of intentions buried in there, intentions that go along with those desires, the clinging, our anger, our greed, our delusion, and we hide them from ourselves. And that's one of the most difficult things, is looking very clearly at what you're doing. Why do you want to do this? What's the payoff? What's actually, oh yeah, well, why that? And we've talked before, and you've talked about your own experiences in the 12-step program, for example. We talked about how you've got those false friends inside,
right.
that would lead you on riotous fun, and then they're gone. But then you can be like, driving along, and you make this decision and you go there and this, and the next thing you know, you're driving past the liquor store again. And why am I driving past there? Because there's a hidden intention somewhere. Mind is sneaky. The defilements are sneaky, but not as sneaky as we are. We can always outsneak them. We can always outsneak them.
Yeah, it's really interesting too because like especially with this karma, because it's like when I was reading that, it didn't stop with like our actions and our behaviors today. It's actually saying that this is actually being it's like a fingerprint basically that goes into your next life, because Buddhists
Hmm.
believe in reincarnation. So when you take on that new life, you're also bringing along these imprints of your past life into your future experiences.
Yeah, it's like a blockchain. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
exactly like a blockchain. It is hardwired in. Um, we've talked before about uh, reincarnation, as they say in Hinduism. In Buddhism, we tend to say rebirth, taking another birth, because there is, in at least the Buddhist stance, is that there is no actual thing that reincarnates. We're not a noun, we are a verb. So what continues through life after life is basically all this karma or kama. All of this karma is, it's like a vortex, a pattern that continues. And we were talking about the other night about fractals, you
Mm-hmm.
know,
Yep.
how we can see in a small way the way we do this all through our lives, how we take on new identities. We're one person at work, we're another person at home, we're another person talking to a subordinate, another person talking to a boss, a person when we're angry, person when we're happy. Um, we take on more and more identities, but they're all predicated on the pattern of our karma. Everything we've done, it's like that dependent origination thing through time, right? So you've got this pattern that continues itself. And I've said before, my analogy was, if I'm smoking a cigar in a darkened room and I hold it up in the air and I move my hand very rapidly in a circle, it can look like a solid circle of light. It exists, but it's not real. It's an illusion, and that's sort of us. So ultimately, you want to stop clinging to all these things that are making this karma, because karma comes from our actions, of course, and we take actions in order to try to avoid dukkha, which is unhappiness, sadness, pain, suffering. There's a lot of translations for it. Unsatisfactoriness, and we want sukha. We want sweetness. We want nice things. We want to be happy. But the one always goes with the other. And as long as, again, as I was saying, if we're stuck trying to find happiness within permanent things, everything has its other side. You have wealth, you have poverty, right? You have status, you have loss of status. And as I've said before, I've seen people become very successful and they become very vulnerable. They become very delicate. They become very scared because suddenly they've got to hang on to what they've got. And if they're in this position, if they say the wrong thing or someone finds a Twitter post from 50 years ago or something, if they had Twitter 50 years ago, I'm old. Suddenly it can all come crashing down and they have so much farther to fall. Maybe falling farther should be my my next podcast. I did falling faster for a while, which is still kind of going on. But so yeah, it's something people don't like. They don't want there to be consequences for their actions because we all justify our actions. And the Buddha is not about justifying what we've done or not justifying it for that matter. When people went to the Buddha and the Buddha said he taught two things only: suffering and how to end the suffering. He never said, "Do you deserve to have your suffering ended?" What kind of comment you go? Oh man, you did what? I don't know if I want to teach you the secret, man. No, he's about short-circuiting all human suffering for all people because all people basically want to be happy. In Buddhism, we have the idea of consciousness, and it's not the Western idea so much. And I had some misunderstandings about this in my first conversations with people that actually knew about Buddhism, and not the introspective consciousness that we have, where I think, therefore I am, but the consciousness of awareness, the consciousness of our humanity. And there are aspects of the human mind that are the same no matter where in space and time you are. You pick any continent, any time, switch the time dial to any year when there's modern humans, switch the world dial for any place at random, and boom, you're going to find a human mind. And it's going to have the same problems that the Buddha addresses, which is suffering and how to end suffering, because we all suffer and we all want to end our suffering. We might not want to necessarily end it right this second. We might not be conscious of our suffering. We might call it something else. And hey, that's fine. Nobody's forcing anyone to take this path. But the Buddha says it's right here. When you get tired of suffering, I've got some hints for you on how to cope with this. And it all has to do with the suffering that our own mind creates. And the mind is the one thing we have access to 24/7, along with our breath, along with our body and our minds. We have access to that. Nobody can bar you from that. You always have all the equipment you need to start working right now, right here. A human mind, a human body, and determination that you want to end your suffering. And that's really all you need to get started. And you've got it right now.
It's pretty cool.
I think so. What a cool religion. Everything needs right here.
When I started reading into that stuff, though, it got really deep. Like, how we use the term name,
Yeah.
like they started breaking it down to where you had freaking the name and the form, and then like
Namarupa,
Namarupa.
Namarupa,
Nama is name, and then Rupa is form, right?
Right. Name and form.
And that all has to do with like your feelings and your perception, your intention, like you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And
yes.
One thing that stuck out to me when I was checking this stuff out when it comes to consciousness is it says that once your consciousness arises in your new existence, it's immediately co-arises with like how they framed it was a psychophysical component of a being. And you go from having that to what they referred to as the sixth sense basis. That's where the physical organism develops the six sense faculties: the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind.
Yes.
And that's where it started tripping me out because I mean, they're saying these are like doors through
Yeah.
where we contact the world, and that when a faculty like the eye or a sense, like a visible form and a consciousness, when they all meet, like that, something occurs out of it. You know what I mean?
Like quantum physics.
It's a trip. That's exactly what I was
Yeah.
thinking. When I was reading that stuff, that's exactly what I was thinking. It's just breaking quantum physics down into
Right. And in Buddhism, the consciousness comes first. You know, you've got those doors, and your consciousness tells you what to let in and out. You know, consciousness goes out looking for things. You know, so and that's very similar to what I understand of quantum physics, which is that consciousness is integral in the phenomenal physical universe. And apparently this has been proven experimentally to the satisfaction of people that know a hell of a lot more about physics than I do. But basically, things need to be observed and known before they exist. And it doesn't need to be like, again, an introspective Cartesian, I think, therefore I am. All it takes is the consciousness of a paramecium, that basic consciousness that all life shares on our planet. So it could be that this consciousness that all living beings have is really, I don't know, the creator of everything. I don't know that consciousness creates reality. That's too simplistic, and it leads to some very sloppy magical thinking, and I think you can kind of see the results of that thinking, certain people around us all through history and even today. But I think consciousness and physical reality are, well, it's dependent origination. They co-arise. This arises, that arises, right? This ceases to arise, that ceases to arise. And there can be, separations in time and space. But what's time after all? I mean, according to some quantum physics, you've got particles that go backwards in time. I've been given to understand. I don't understand that at all, but I've been given to understand that.
Well, it's interesting though, because it's like first they go into talking about contact. You know what I mean?
Yeah, contact with the senses.
And that's straight up precognitive. Precognition is what I'm getting from it, and then like sensory experiences. You know what I mean? Like your skin and the senses that you get from your skin, and you hear people talking about putting all of these oils on your body for meditation and stuff. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's something that really stuck out to me, because when I was sobering up, I remember hearing these meditational tapes that they made us do in treatment, where we had to sit down and meditate. That's where I started getting into it, and they were doing like these things where they were talking about putting lotions on you and so that it could react the senses and everything on your skin. And I found that interesting. But then they started getting into like your feelings and stuff, and your the tone of how you feel. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think a lot of it's like you. It's not something that says this is the soul. It's just like a instinctual kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like being pleasant or unpleasant or just neutral. You know what I mean? I think that's how far it's going. That's just my take on a lot of that. Because we've had a lot of conversations about it. I think that it goes deeper, but I don't believe that you should split the physical from the mental and emotional and the spiritual. I believe that it's all of it. They're all connected, and like to take away from one to make another one stand out more is actually you're not helping yourself. You know what I mean?
Right.
I believe that everything spiritual can actually eventually someday be explained in a physical world. Like we could literally figure out what these spiritual things are. It's called ascension, you know. So I mean, I really do think that at one time or another we will be able to ascend to that level of consciousness.
Well, there was a guy who once said his method was science, his aim was religion.
Mm-hmm.
And there have been movements that try to make sure that the threads of spirituality and physical science and religion don't become untwined. I believe that the early Rosicrucian movement was an attempt at that, because I think these differentiations are our own. You know, one of the things we do as a species is we tend to cut things up so we can understand them better. And this is very useful. It's a great way to understand the universe. But getting into the Taoism a little bit, the Taoists talked about resting in your original state, finding the face you had before you were born. The Tao is the one, and it gave birth to the two, and it gave birth to the many. So we tend to say, this is spiritual. And we go no further and say, this is physical. And it's just this. And we dislike when we see evidence or we have experiences of these things overlapping. So in a sense, Raj, I think what we need to do is return to, our original understanding that we had before we began doing these differentiations. And that's not to say you should stop doing these differentiations. If everybody was just like, completely without any separation of subject and object, which is often the goal of meditation, everyone would just be sitting around going, wow, look at that flower, man. Nothing would get done. We still need to, and we've talked about this before, we're in a samsaric world. We're experiencing samsara, which is a verb. Samsara is the just going around in circles that you have in this world, the world, as we say. So we want to do it skillfully, skillful samsara. We want to keep our long-term happiness in mind. We want to stay harmless. We want to follow our precepts. And our 5 precepts as lay Buddhists are what keep us human. I believe it's been said more than once that if you keep your 5 precepts, you will at least be guaranteed a human rebirth. And you can take that rebirth as being the rebirth we all go through in the course of a single day as we become different people to cope with different situations. But if we're keeping our precepts, these different people will always be sane and humane and human. So we practice ahimsa. We do not kill. We do not lie or steal or cheat on our spouses, especially. We do not get drunk. We stay sane, and we realize that we are the owners of our actions. And that's one of the things about karma, I think, that people are uncomfortable with, is it makes you very important. And I've gone on about this before, but when you realize that every thought you have, every intention, and every act that you do, and of course thoughts are included in this, every thought, every action that you have has consequences. They're very important. Every decision you make is very important. Okay, you can't just say, screw it, I'm just going to do this. No, it's going to come back to you one way or another, either immediately or further down the line. And again, we all have examples of this in our everyday life. I'm sure we can all look back to and see. Many of us don't want to look back at these things. And Raj, you talked before about when you were going through your program, there was a certain amount of introspection. You really had to look at yourself.
Yep.
Really hard.
Very.
And I imagine that was one of the hardest things for you to do.
Well, the hardest part about it was ignorance is a big, like, and that's something Buddhists really talk about their ignorance. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't really have a concept of. Like last week when I was telling you about the tree with the I keep forgetting.
The Bodhi tree.
the tree where I was meditating under it and the acorns were falling.
The acorns, yeah.
Okay, now the ignorance in that is like I'm sitting there and I'm meditating, and the reason why I'm meditating is because I want this great, amazing spiritual experience to happen. And as long as I sit there and I keep focusing on doing my meditations, eventually I'll have that amazing spiritual experience. And I didn't realize, because of my ignorance at the time, that the experience was happening right before my eyes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I was expecting more. You know, and
but you realize it later.
Right, later. And it's because it took time for me to develop and figure out that, hey, man, you just let it, or an opportunity for you to have a better understanding of things just passed you by because you didn't know anything about it. You know what I mean? And that's the way it happens in my life. You know, a lot of that stuff, it takes time for things to sink in before I finally catch on. And
that way for everybody, dude. It's that way for everybody. You know, all the people that, you know, were able to like get enlightenment really easy, they're all gone. They left this game, this video game that we're still stuck playing. You know, in a certain sense, we're playing this game called Samsara, and it's a fun game. You've done some gaming, right, Raj?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, you get locked into the game and it's this and that. And Buddhism is an attempt to say, you know what, I'm putting the controller down. I'm going to go hit the john. I'm going to go make myself a meal. I'm going to go outside and touch some grass. And as far as what happens when you leave the game, we're not going there today. But yeah, but, you know, the thing is, when you had that experience and you're talking about it now, that shows you've learned something from it. You know, there was a famous case of, and actually I've experienced this before, where somebody was trying to learn meditation and was practicing really hard at meditating, and went to his meditation teacher and he said, this isn't working out very well. My mind's all over the place. I lost this opportunity, probably had some experiences like you're describing. And he goes, you know, my meditation isn't going so well. And the teacher said, well, actually, no, that's really good. You've got to know that your mind is disorganized before you can start organizing it. You've got to recognize things, that mistakes you've made, so that you can correct them. You know, in Buddhism, we don't beat ourselves up over these lost opportunities, but we look at them squarely and say, okay, I don't want to do that again. I'm going to do my best not to. What can I learn from that? And then you just go back, and we pick ourselves up, because, you know, all the people that could really just get enlightenment with just hearing one wise word or something, they all got it and they're gone. They're not on this planet anymore. People like you and me, Raj, we've been here for trillions of eons. We've probably been every different species of animal, every different kind of human possible. We've been wealthy, we've been poor, we've been sick, we've been healthy. We've done it all. And but what we haven't done is gotten past that, like you were saying earlier, that ignorance, that ignorance, when we spend so much time ignoring things. And you know, one of my things I've always been big on is, you know, my little saying, may all beings attain to the summum bonum, true wisdom and perfect happiness, to be found in freedom from ignorance and delusion. If we only knew what we were doing, I think we would stop doing it. And we just tell ourselves so many lies, and we don't even know we're lying to ourselves. You know, we really believe this stuff. It's so difficult to look down, because, you know, we think something is great, yet we still keep getting these same bad results. So we have to look deeper and say, you know, why am I doing this? Why am I continuing this? And get past all the excuses. Oh, it's fun. Oh, everybody else is doing it. Well, this is part of my... The big thing for most people is they really identify with this stuff. Their whole idea, their sense of self, is built on delusions. It's built on defilements. It's built on being an asshole. It's built on being a drunk. It's built on, you know, engaging in any of these activities, right? So we don't want to surrender them. And we live in a society that downright encourages greed and sloth and envy and things like that. You know, 7 deadly sins from the Catholic Church, that's all necessary for the economy, you know? So it's very, very difficult. It can be a very lonely path. unless you can hook up with other people that are serious about it too and say, hey, this isn't working. Let's try something different. Let's get a hold of our own minds. And like we were saying earlier, instead of trying to change everything around us, let's work on ourselves because we have access to our minds. We have access to ourselves. I can't change the way other people behave around me directly, but I can change the way I behave. And
Yeah.
that changes everyone else. And I think you've probably seen that too, Raj. If you're in a better mood, the people around you will be in a better mood.
Well, even there though, like when you talk about cravings, the cravings is where that really sticks out, and that's what I relate a lot with the Buddhists, because they really break this stuff down really good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because like even when you're having a feeling where it's a pleasant feeling, okay, we have a tendency to crave to it and cling to it. And we don't want to let it go, that good feeling, you know what I mean? That pleasing feeling. And then like whenever something's unpleasing, we have a tendency to like we crave for it to just go away, just go. You know what I mean?
Right. And we crave the pleasures that we had in order to replace the unpleasantness we have.
Or even say if it's a neutral, if it's just neutral, if we then want to crave for something to come along to make it more interesting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like fuel to for like a loop, a whole cycle, basically, just a whole insanity, doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, and expecting a different result. Yeah.
You know?
And well, we are. In Buddhism, anyone that isn't an arhat, that is an enlightened person, is considered to be, to a greater or lesser extent, insane. And but what you're talking about is central to how the Buddha defines suffering, which is clinging. We cling because we crave. We crave things and we cling to them, and it is the clinging itself which is the suffering. Because, like you say, you can't. These things are impermanent, and as you say, you cling to them, and then you don't have them anymore, and then you're miserable, and you're clinging to the memory. And and the thing is, when we're miserable, we usually try to fix it by chasing after more pleasures, to cling something else to cling to. Clinging also means feeding in Buddhism. And that's very central to it. In fact, in the Buddhist Catechism, the first thing they're taught is, what is one? One is that all beings feed. And when you are feeding on things that are ultimately unsatisfactory, you are going to be unsatisfied. You're going to have dukkha, unsatisfaction, suffering. And it comes from craving these things. And we crave these things because we're ignorant of their true nature.
Well, clinging too. Like whenever I was getting into that, they started talking about like craving eventually becomes clinging, and we start grasping at things, because we want to possess something, or and we start identifying with objects or other people's viewpoints, certain ideas, or even our own sense of self, what we perceive ourselves to be. You know what I mean? We start.
And we perceive ourselves to be these things that we identify with. Usually, our cravings, the things we cling to, and we define ourselves that way. I'm part of the Pepsi generation. People like identify themselves with their sports ball team, with the things they consume. People walk around with like Nike sweatshirts. Nike isn't paying them to advertise. They paid money so that they can wear that and be part of something else that they can identify with. And it's a lot easier to identify with these things outside of yourself than to actually build up an identity from within, which is not dependent upon any of these things. And it can make you a little lonely when everybody else is talking about their favorite sports ball team, and you got nothing to say. You have no idea what they're talking about because you don't follow football or baseball or whatever it is. People were going on about the Super Bowl. I wasn't even aware that it was playing that day, and I had no idea who the teams were. But yeah, you have this craving, which turns into clinging. And this clinging is very often how we even define ourselves. So it's ridiculous to us to think that we would ever cease clinging. But to cease clinging, we have to cease craving. To cease craving, we have to stop being ignorant. Stop being ignorant, we have to study ourselves, study what's going on, look and see what's happening. How are we causing ourselves suffering? When you're miserable, you got to go back and say, why am I suffering? It's because I feel this or think that. Well, why do you feel this or think that? If you go back far enough, you usually will find some very ignorant decisions about how to think or what to think about something, how to frame something. You know, we have ways there are these fabrications. We make bodily fabrications, first of all. That's the way we breathe. I haven't talked much about breath. Breath is very important. Breath is unconscious, and at the same time, it's conscious. It's where the mind, the conscious mind and the unconscious mind, body, you know, the autonomic nervous system, they meet there so that you can actually consciously control your breathing, but at the same time, you'll breathe even when you're asleep. At least I hope you do. Obviously, you did, or you wouldn't be here. So you've got bodily fabrication, the way you breathe, and the way you breathe will determine how you feel. This is a control handle as well as an indicator. If you're upset, angry, sad, it will be reflected in your breathing. If you have a negative emotion of any sort, look to how you're breathing. This will tell you what's going on. And then you can get control of that breathing. Slow, deep breaths, for example, are a good way just to calm down. And once you've got the body under control, and this is a way to control the emotions, it can be used to control the emotions, then you can change the way you talk to yourself, your verbal fabrications, the conversation you have with yourself about these things, like, this sucks. I'm being put on again. These people are no good. Look at this evil fuck did this thing. You know, these are not helpful conversations to have with yourself, right? And then there's the way you frame things, right? The way you fabricate the reality grid that you're looking through things. Is it going to be, I'm the eternal loser? Or is it going to be, I'm a winner. I can navigate this. I can do this. You know, just having that different mental framework. So these are all tools we have, how we use our bodies, how we breathe, how we talk to ourselves, and how we think about things. And these are not easy things to do, but they work. And, you know, the Buddha had that famous, I think it was in the Kalama Sutta, where he said, don't believe anything just because somebody says so. Don't believe something just because it's in a book. Don't believe. And people say, oh, great. Well, we don't have to believe in anything. No, but what the Buddha said after that, he said, what you do is you try it and see, you work at it, and you see the results you get. And I started seriously pursuing Buddhism. And the results were completely in line with what the Buddha and the Arahants and all the people for the past 2,600 years who have been practicing Buddhism said it would be. So all I know is I'm on a good path. It's taking me to better places I've ever been in my life. As far as the next life goes, why not? It makes sense from what I see in this life that these patterns would be continued in another life. And it's a good working hypothesis. But really, the whole other lives thing, I think it's really a minor part of Buddhism. It's more like, I've used this metaphor before, but I used to work in the art world. I worked in art galleries for a while. And if you ever see an oil painting or you know, any kind of a painting, but like an oil or an acrylic painting, it's on a piece of canvas, and the canvas is put on what they call stretchers. And the canvas has to be bent around the stretchers and back behind them, and then a frame is put over it. So you're always missing an inch or two of canvas. Sometimes it's even painted on. Some of the paint itself goes over. Rebirth to me is like that canvas on the stretcher. It's suggested by everything else in the rest of the painting, but it's not the main picture. It's not, it's something that you would expect to be there because of everything you see here, but it's not something that you directly observe. Some people remember past lives, some people don't. But again, it's not important. It's suggested by everything else that we know and that we experience. So that's my take on future births anyway. But yeah, we have these tools and we just have to use them. They're difficult to use, especially because we have these ingrained habits not to use them. Our entire society, our entire culture, all of our friends and family, all discourage us from this because they're wading around in some samsaric puddle and they want everybody else there too. And they can be very confused and even upset when all the things they think are of supreme importance suddenly don't seem as important to you anymore. You know? We've talked before about changing your playground and your playmates. And you know that when you've decided to end certain bad habits, very often you have to stop associating with the people that encourage you in that, because that's how they regard you. That's how they identify you. That's their identity of you is built up on the guy that does this or does that. You don't want to do that no more. So they can be very upset, you know? And we see this a lot, I think.
I believe it's more disinterest. Like when, all the people that I used to hang out with when I did drugs and alcohol, that was what we had in common. And when I sobered up, there's nothing in common there. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, that's all you had. Yeah, it was getting high. Yeah.
It's pretty sad, don't get me wrong, but it's the truth. I mean, that was the only thing that we had in common. And we it you know what I mean? I used to call them fair weather friends, basically. And that's where you have to choose between actually looking for people who you want to be true friends, or finding people who are fair weather friends that are there for just, the good times and what you have in common and what you're doing.
So they're not really wanting to hang out with you. They wanted someone to drink with.
Right. Basically, that's the best way of putting it. Now, when it comes to the whole reincarnation thing, with me, I can see where you're coming from there, because like even like with Christians, most people who are into Christianity believe, if they believe in what they say they believe in, they believe that heaven is now. You know what I mean? It's like a lot of people who are Christians are trying to do all these good things so that they can be rewarded by their life in heaven. Well, even their text says heaven is here and it's now. So
yeah, there's that line in the Gospel of Thomas, which is not canonical, but I think Jesus said, "The kingdom of God is spread upon the face of the earth, but men see it not."
Right.
Which kind of goes along with the Buddhist idea of we talked about before, when three beings see the same thing, they see three different things. So reality is, to a certain extent, or at least our perception of reality, not reality itself, but our perceptions are conditioned by our minds. So that when a hell being looks at a river, he sees a river of flowing lava. When a Naga being who dwells underwater looks at the river, it sees crystal palaces. And when a human looks at the river, he sees water, just cool, clear water, as the song used to say. Remember that song?
No, I don't.
And you don't remember that song?
No.
Don't you listen to him, Dan? He's a desert not a man, and he spreads the burning sands with water.
No.
You don't remember that song? Water. I love that song. I don't get to look that. See if I can get the band to cover it. I don't know. We already do El Paso. I hate that song. Oh God, you know that song?
El Paso.
In the West Texas town of El Paso.
Yeah.
It is so bloody long.
Yeah.
It is so, poor Chuck just sings that he can't remember the lyrics half the time. There's so many of them. It's like, he's like, wait, I gotta get a notebook. Oh man, that song's a pain in the butt.
It's almost as bad as driving through El Paso. I swear.
Never been there. What's El Paso like?
It's horrible.
Oh God! They have a song and everything.
Yeah, I mean, and I only drove through it. It was like I was on the interstate driving through it, and I'm like, oh my God, this is a horrible place.
Oh, wow. Glad you didn't stay.
Yeah, it was just right through. We passed through there about 4 or 5 times. I used to live in Arizona, and we'd travel back to Illinois to visit the family here.
Right.
So got to see El Paso quite a few times.
Huh. I've never been to Texas.
It's interesting. Florida is another direction where we had to come up from the south when we first moved to Arizona, and that was probably That was probably the most interesting trip we ever had. Texas is very strange. Like they have a rest stop right at the border where you're looking down at the border of Mexico and the United States,
Uh-huh.
and all you see all night long are like illegals running in and getting busted by the border patrol, just one right after the other, and it's at a rest stop.
Rest stop. Oh my goodness.
Looking down at it, that's like, oh my gosh. So,
I've heard stories about Texas. One guy I knew went down there and he said, "Oh, I went down and I stayed with my buddy in Texas." I said, "What was that like?" He said, "Well," he said he kind of freaked out when he got there. He got off the plane and his buddy said, "Oh, let's go get a drink." So they went to this bar and he said they drove along. They came to some roadhouse or something, right? And he parks the car. He says, "What gun shall I take into the bar with me?" Opens his glove box. He's got all these revolvers in there. And my buddy's like, you select a gun to take into the bar? I don't know if I want to live here." It's just like, never been a fan of alcohol and guns personally in combination.
which is a good point to bring up, or good time to bring up Yosef's comments to you. He says you might even see people march with swords in their mouth and climb a ladder made of swords.
Definitely got to get him on the show.
And then he said, or he asked, "Are you against drunkenness? What about other conscious substances?"
Okay. Well, in Buddhism, we have the fifth precept, which is that literally you will not consume alcoholic beverages that cause you to be, screw up your mind, basically. And I think that with these substances, and I've talked to a couple of Buddhists on the subject, including some Buddhist monks. With alcohol, the problem is it makes you heedless. It makes you stupid. And it makes you unable to properly keep the rest of your precepts. They tell a story about a guy that was captured by an evil being, spiritual being, and captures him and says, "I'm going to eat you." He's like, "No, don't eat me." So I'll tell you what, break one of your Buddhist precepts and I'll let you go. And he's like, "All right, let's see. Let's one I want to break. Murder? No, not that one. Let's see. Stealing? No, I don't want to do that. Lying? No, I don't want to do that. Sexual irregularity? No, my wife would kill me. Drinking? All right, I'll drink." It's like, I will break the fifth precept. I will drink. Right. So he has a drink, and the demon says, "All right, you can go." And he's like, "Oh, that was awful. I better have another drink." So he goes to a bar on the way home and he has a drink. Well, I think you see where this is going. First thing that happens is he starts talking with the barmaid, who seems awfully cute, gives him a free drink. Next thing you know, he's really flirting with her heavily. All right, so there, he's breaking that precept. Well, all of a sudden, her boyfriend shows up. I wasn't talking to her. He lied already. Okay, you see where this is going.
Yes.
By the end of the night, because of that one drink that started, he's broken every precept, including getting into a fight with the guy and stabbing him. So it's so yeah. On the other hand, alcohol, if you're using it medicinally, like if it's in cough syrup or something like that, or I like to use Angostura bitters sometimes in my tea. And I've ever had, and it's an alcohol. Or if I take a tincture or something like that with alcohol in it, a medicine, it's like that's not a problem. It has to do with it actually causing you to be heedless. Now, as far as other drugs go, especially psychedelics, this often comes up with psychedelics. And I'm thinking of Ajahn Punadamo, who is a very learned Buddhist. He's got a wonderful YouTube channel. I would suggest to anyone listening to check him out. And others I've talked to. If you are using something like, say, magic mushrooms or something like that, and you're using it as part of a conscious attempt at consciousness expansion, then that's one thing. If you're taking it just to make yourself heedless, like let's eat some acid or eat some mushrooms and go to the movies and then we'll get drunk, blah, blah, blah. No, that would be it has to do with them causing heedlessness. There are Forest Ajahns, Buddhist monks who smoke cigarettes. Tobacco is not seen as something that causes heedlessness. And I would argue it would be the same thing with any drug, really. It has to do with how you use it. So if you're using cannabis, for example, as a medicine, either for spiritual, emotional, or physical ailments, um, I don't think that's breaking the precept as such. If you're using cannabis so you just want to just not think and just be, that's a different kettle of fish. So it comes back again to your intentions and how you use it. But alcohol is particularly an issue because I personally don't think that there's any really useful quantity of alcohol to take to alter your consciousness, and it too easily slides into just drunkenness. The old saying is, by the time you realize you shouldn't drink anymore, you're drunk. So you don't stop. It destroys your judgment. And that's what the Buddha was concerned about, was destroying your judgment, destroying your ability to think clearly. So alcohol is pretty much right out the window when it comes to Buddhism, except for like small doses in your cough syrup or something like that. I don't think it would go so far as to a couple of glasses of wine after work just to relax. No. But things like cannabis, marijuana, whatever you want to call it, hemp, it has so many names, such a long history. Ganja, I think, is the oldest name we have from Sanskrit. Actually, in Buddhism, this is interesting. I have been assured that among the list of a monk's possessions in the Vinaya, now the Vinaya are the monastic rules. We have 5 precepts as lay people to keep. You can take further precepts, like 8 precepts for special occasions, where you refrain from attending theatrical performances, for example, or performing music and things like that. That we won't talk about that tonight because I'll talk for another hour. Next week we'll do music and Buddhism. Tonight's hamburgers.
Well, he had a couple other things to say. He said that he fell in love with a Mexican girl, and I wanted to say I fell in love with a Mexican girl too. And then he put music symbols behind it. So I'm guessing he's talking about a song. I fell in love with a Mexican girl.
Mexicali Blues is the first song that comes to my mind, if you know that one.
Then he went on to say, at the Phuket festival, they shed blood for their sins.
Oh, wow.
So,
That sounds almost like the Jains, but I wouldn't put anything past the Mahayana guys. They have a lot of weird aspects of their Buddhism. Still Buddhist. I mean, they have good arguments about it. But it's like, yeah. Well, the Jains, who were a group that were active in the Buddha's time and still are around today, they would go out of their way to actually suffer just to burn up bad karma. The Buddhist technique is to not water those seeds. Karma is seen as seeds. We talked about seeds earlier, and they're scattered on the ground, and some of them will fall on rocks and they're not going to sprout very well, others in rich soil. But there's some seeds you don't want to water or take care of. There's other seeds you want to encourage. You can't get out of karma. It's going to get you one way or another unless you can expand yourself to a point where you can basically only make the karma that leads to not making karma anymore. The idea is you don't want to make any karma at all. But I still like that ladder of swords metaphor he had. I like that.
Now, I mean, you guys talk about the Jain all the time, but I'm going to tell you one I really want to figure out more about, and it's just pure curiosity, and it's the Bon. Those are some crazy. That's some crazy stuff.
Yeah. I don't know a whole lot about them, but they, I think they, like I said, they were very influenced by Buddhism, but they also preserve some really old knowledge, I think, of the pre-Buddhist Tibetan religion.
It was amazing to me because I found out that they don't believe burning their dead on funeral pyres. That they'll put them out in the open so that the birds can pick at the body.
Yeah, the Buddhists do that in Tibet as well, and the Zoroastrians do that. They have what they call towers of silence, where they take the bodies because they worship fire. They believe it's sacred, and so they won't pollute the fire with a human body.
Mhm.
but there's a specific vulture apparently that tends to hang out around these places. Unfortunately, of course, the religion had to migrate from Persia, Iran today after the Arab conquest. So they moved to India, where they could still practice their religion, and then there's, the Parsis are still there today, as they're called. But I guess they've had to pull back on the Tower of Silence stuff because um, it used to be they would build these. I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of a Tower of Silence, but there's huge buildings where they would just lay the bodies out, men, women, children in different rows, and they'd have these huge walls so nobody could see what was going on in there, but it was open to the air, so the birds could get down. Well, as India has become more and more of an urban center, an urban kind of a country, people are building skyscrapers, and suddenly you can see down into these things, and people don't like it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they're like, can you guys stop doing that, please? So,
And
so they're working on that.
I do have to apologize. I did not catch on to what he was saying when he said I fell in love with a Mexican girl. That's out of that. He corrected me on that. He said it was the song El Paso.
Oh, El Paso, yes.
I told him, I was like,
of El Paso, I fell in love with a Mexican.
Yeah.
I thought of that Grateful Dead song, Mexicali Blues, which is another good one for that song. But
I did not even catch that until he said that, and then I told him that I can't believe I didn't catch it. So thank you for telling me.
Well, maybe we'll get him on Thursday for the that long. You do a really long show Thursdays.
Yeah, he's more than welcome on my show if he wants to come
You're
on.
like for 8 hours at a time, sometimes 8, 9, 10 hours on Thursdays.
Well, the shows I do then gets kind of out of hand because there's this one that we do. It's called Quantum Gathering, and
those guys.
those guys are rough, man. They make
Especially when Mike and Bob show up, it's really insane.
Yeah, they make you read stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
Roger, you know what? I think I'm getting a signal from Shambhala International Airport. I think we're going to be making our approach run soon. So it's been an hour and a half. So we need to think about winding things up. Not immediately, but we should probably start figuring out last thoughts and ideas and stuff like that, or anything else you wanted to add or talk about.
No, I mean, you've actually done quite a good show and everything. I mean, a lot of the stuff that I've been able to read up on and stuff and try to keep up with you about, I've already talked about. There was a couple of things that I did want to talk about a little, but they were small stuff, like about the self.
Right. Yeah, the self is interesting. I usually go on about the similarities I see with Aristotle's idea of the self, the Buddhist idea of the self, and that kind of gets into that whole thing of the self basically being an illusion.
Right.
Not to say that it doesn't exist, but it's not real ultimately. Someone pointed out about someone always I've talked about Ajahn Punadamo. He is an expert on Buddhist mythology. Buddhist demonology and all the strange spiritual beings, the yakshas and the nagas and the devas. And people say, do you believe these things literally exist? And his reply is, well, do you think any of this literally exists? I mean, ultimately in Buddhism, it's all these perceptions. So a perception of a spiritual being ultimately isn't that different from the perception of a tree. Just one might be more personal than the other. But they all come back to you, to your mind, and that ultimately is what we have control over. So if you're meeting a spiritual being, this could very well be your mind communicating with itself in the only way that it can. We've talked about that before, where we have to gain our knowledge through previous knowledge. I mean, you can't tell somebody something that they don't already know, in a certain sense. I forget who was it that said that if you had a society where there were no horses and no one had ever seen a horse or heard of a horse, and you walked a horse down the street, nobody would see it. I think they would see something, but they wouldn't see a horse. And so, yeah, it all comes back to the mind. The mind is the forerunner of all. The mind comes first.
Right.
That's a good way to.
It's like when you were talking about ignorance too. there's one thing that I really appreciate the 12-step programs for teaching me. Like, there's a difference between ignorance and stupidity. You
That's
know,
true. I like that.
ignorance is not knowing. Stupidity is knowing and still doing it.
Yes.
You know,
Yes. We do so many things and we know better.
yeah. So
So this is very often those false friends inside encouraging us to do it too.
exactly. And
Wow.
but yeah, that's about all I had. I mean, later it would be kind of cool on another episode to kind of go over the self, because that's a big topic all by
Yeah,
itself. But
Yeah, we can talk about that. That'd be interesting. But you know, as it is, I've just got another signal from Shambhala International Airport, and I see you've got your electronics warfare board operating over there. So I think I'm going to have to turn off the smoking lamp. The stewards will be by to collect your hash pipes, rolling papers, and any other paraphernalia you might have. Please return your seat to an upright position. Please place the tray in front of you to back where it's supposed to be. We are finalizing our descent to an undisclosed mountain in an undisclosed location in the Himalayan or possibly Himalayan range. And the secret gate is opening, and I see the signals from Shambhala International Airport. Next stop from here, Agartha. For those who are traveling on, please stay in your seats. Otherwise, we'll be deplaning shortly after we land. Thanks everyone for being here. I especially am appreciative of our new listener, Yosef, who is a really good guy, and anyone else that's listening. And I hope that we will see you all next week. Roger, would you like to give your socials before we go?
yeah, you can find me at minds.com at Roger_Hansen. You can also find me at X Roger Hansen at ROGLOL1973. I'm also on Teams as well as Matrix Elements. On Teams, I'm got my own community called Rogers Hangout, and I've got Rogers Hangout on Matrix Element Matrix as well, where you can find me there. Or you can find me at the Infinite Imaginarium as well as the Quantum Gathering. So with that, I am done.
Well, my website is navakavada.org. That's NAVAKAVADA.org. It's spelled just like it sounds. I'm also at Rogers Hangout, and you can find me at minds.com, Auto Excelsior, or Auto X. And you might run into me at the store. You can always send a messenger pigeon. And or you might see me down at the nursing home when I go to visit my mom. You never know. So, all right, we're making our final approach. Thank you so much, Roger, for being our co-pilot and electronics warfare officer. Thank you, all of our viewers, listeners, and whatnot. Please like and subscribe. Feel free and be happy to leave a comment. That makes us happy and makes us feel free. And final approach is coming. So we'll see you all.